If you're currently running on an Intel MacBook, the time for you to upgrade is most likely now because Apple has officially had their event yesterday and my finance department isn't too happy because I spent way too much on the M3 MacBooks. But it's okay because our sponsor has us covered. Nobody. I just want to preface this by saying that I am a current user of the M1 MacBook Air with 7 CPU cores with 256 gigabytes of storage and 16 gigabytes of RAM. I just want to mention that I did say 7 CPU core. I meant to say 7 GPU core. I say this later in the video, but just wanted to make the correction here. And I just got back from my trip, and it's been my main laptop for 3 years. I know some other tech tubers use the Pro and maxed out versions of the 14 and 16 inch, but I like to keep things basic and just shoot everything on the iPhone. I have gotten the M2 MacBook Air and the other laptops across the channel throughout the years, but I always just go back to use the M1 MacBook Air because it just does everything for me. So this event and who it was targeted for was people like me and like Intel, who is currently on the ground. Let's go ahead and dive into the event because I'm both happy and disappointed at the release of the new MacBooks, but let's go through the things that I'm happy with first. I'm happy that the 13-inch MacBook Pro is officially gone. If you weren't aware, it was an old design that Apple was holding on to for whatever reason, and it really made no sense next to the old MacBook Air like this one that gave you nearly the same performance, not to mention when they made the redesign of the MacBook Air starting with M2, with it being better in almost every way possible. The only reason of getting the 13-inch MacBook Pro was if you wanted better battery life, but other than that, you're really just wasting your money on just buying that Pro name. Now, I'm also happy at the fact that the barrier of entry for the 14-inch has been lowered to $1,600 instead of $2,000. Now I'm going to run through the new technical upgrades of the M3 processor as fast as I can because there's a lot more disappointment that I want to talk about. So first and foremost, it's a 3 nanometer process. Impressive, but don't jump to the laptop just for that. We have something also called dynamic caching, and from my understanding, this is GPU exclusive, and it will only allocate the exact memory needed instead of adding a buffer, which is what is traditionally done. So in theory, this should make RAM on the GPU side more efficient, not the overall system RAM. But it is a unified memory, so maybe it does impact the RAM. I'm gonna have to do some more testing on that. They also added ray tracing, which is great. Woohoo for realistic lighting in games, even though lighting looks good enough, I care more about my FPS. There's also some improvements with the mesh shading, so that should be better for geometric performance, processing, whatever, yada, yada, yada. It's a better GPU architecture, big win for consumers. You get the point. You'll see improvements across the board if you utilize GPU in your workflow, and there's also an AV1 decoder as well. Now that we've gotten the technical jargon out the way, let's focus on the meat of the product that people are going to buy, and that's going to be the laptops. So the traditional 14-inch starts at $2,000 and comes in space black. I say traditional because I don't want to confuse it with the base 14-inch, and it'll make sense in a second when I talk about that. Anyway, let's go back to this space black. It doesn't really look that black to me, just a dark gray. I know what space looks like just by looking up at the sky, and I know what black looks like, and that color doesn't really match either of those. This is space. It's nice. This is also space, which is nice. And this doesn't look like the color of space black. I'm just saying. I think Apple was smart enough to know that they had to give people another reason to upgrade to the new Macs. They got me, you saw it on my live stream, to get people to buy the new Macs. I still think that Midnight looks the best in my humble opinion. This to me seems like a space color. I don't know why people are hating on this. They do have some anti-fingerprint coating on it, whatever. It's fingerprints, it's not the end of the world. Anyway, M3 Pro, M3 Max are a thing now, but let's get into more of the disappointment. Once again, I want to preface this by saying that M3 overall is good and Apple cleaned up their lineup, but it's still confusing because initially I was happy with the 16-inch M3 14-inch, 16-inch M3 14-inch. What the heck did I just say? Initially, I was happy that Apple lowered the barrier of entry to $1,600 for the 14-inch. However, it still comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM. I'll say that again. 8 gigabytes of RAM in a $1,600 laptop, 2 Thunderbolts on the same side, and to top it off, it's really not that big of a leap from M2 in itself. Because you see, I started to notice something in the Scary Fast event Apple had, and they kept referring to the M1 family and never mentioned M2. As a matter of fact, I looked at Apple's own transcript of the event, and M2 is literally not mentioned once. For example, let's look at this chart. Apple said that M3 is 60% faster than M1.
In fact, the 14-inch MacBook Pro with M3 is up to 60% faster than the 13-inch MacBook Pro with M1. So it's great.
Whoa. Hold up for a second. It's 60% faster in image and effect filter performance. How come that wasn't clarified? I mean, clearly it's clarified in the text, but you're given a presentation. Reference your slides. Yes, it is 60% faster in your bar chart in image and effects performance. I'm opening up Google Docs. I'm watching YouTube. I'm coding in VS Code. What's the performance difference in opening up Safari faster? 0%? Gotcha. Now, I'm not knocking engineers at Apple or the release of M3. It's just the event kind of left a bad taste in my mouth with how it was presented. And it once again makes me go back and say that Apple just knocked it out the park with M1, and it's just too good. They set the standard and they're having trouble exceeding their own standard that they made 3 years ago. I made a video about how the MacBook Air, this one, has been the best-selling laptop for 3 years. It's nearly $1,000. It's nearly $1,000, and it's no dispute that this is truly one of the greatest laptop releases of the 2020s. It's power efficient. It has the performance you need. It's thin and light. Like, what else could you want in an ultra thin laptop? Seriously, what more do you need? Now, for people wondering about M3 Pro, M3 Max, you know who you are, and if you need that power, you have more options than before. But for people like me that just care about the entry chips, I already have a feeling that the used market, yet again, is going to be the place for you to buy your MacBooks. For example, you can get a, no offense, a gimped M3 14-inch for $1,600 brand new with less RAM, less overall performance, less ports, or an M2 Pro for $1,600 refurbished from Apple, or in the used market that comes with double the RAM, way more performance, more ports, and you're most likely going to still get warranty for that first year if you buy directly from Apple refurbished. It's almost like a no-brainer of what you would go for. The best metaphor to describe this would be, would you buy a base model Mercedes? First of all, I would never touch a Mercedes with a 10-foot pole, but hear me out. Would you buy a base model of a Mercedes or a fully loaded version of last year's model? Get the fully loaded one. It's still a Mercedes, but it has all the upgrades that someone else paid for it, and it depreciated. Just get the M2 Pro used. It's an overall better machine. You're getting what? 100 less nits at SDR. So what? You don't even know what SDR probably means. Now, I don't want to come across as pretentious by saying $1,600 in America isn't outrageous, because it's really not in this country. But I can only imagine overseas what the base M3 14-inch cost, and there is no way I would pay that amount for 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, I will give credit and say that Apple is efficient in their RAM, but that doesn't excuse the fact that in some places, people are paying months of their salary, half a year's of their salary for 8 gigabytes of RAM. That is just ludicrous to me. That's insanity to me. Factor in that in some of these countries, they don't have Apple refurbished, and also the used market isn't as plentiful as, a lot of these, like America, which means that their options suck even more than us. I'm happy with the release of the M3 MacBooks, but I'm also upset at the same time, because it seems like Apple is following some Tick-Tock style. Not the Tick-Tock vertical videos that rot your brain because you have nothing better to do, but similar to Intel's and hardware manufacturing's Tick-Tock cycle, where the tick is the new architecture and the tock being efficiency improvements of its predecessor. So for Apple, it's like the odd numbers are the ticks in their new architectures, and the tocks, the even numbers, the M2, M4, M6, are going to be the efficiencies or the efficient versions of its predecessor. So for me, it seems like the even numbers are the way to go moving forward with Apple Silicon. Just a thought. One last thing before I end this video, there were no talks of the MacBook Airs or iPads or anything else. But I guarantee you, March or the spring event next year, Apple will put M3 in their MacBook Air and iPads. And if you're trying to get the best bang for your buck, like if you want the best MacBook experience on the go, I honestly think the MacBook Air is truly the best MacBook Apple has to offer. The 14 inches there with its HDMI, SD card reader, all that good stuff, bigger, brighter display. But unless you're running a business or you're not a student, I really do think the MacBook Air is great for a vast majority of people. It's hard to pass up a lightweight machine, which is why I'm still not on that 14-inch hype train. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I appreciate every single sub, like, and comment. And as always, guys, much love. It's Halloween, so I got things to do. Peace. The time is officially over because Apple had their event yesterday. Terrible. I kinda wanna start over. I kinda want to start over. I kinda want to start over. I kinda want to start over. The only real reason of getting the 13-inch MacBook Air, or the only reason of getting the 13-inch MacBook Pro